What is up, Chicken and Silvers fans? So, a few of you asked for the podcast to come back. I guess some of you wanted to hear what I thought about things on a regular basis. So, looking to kind of maybe revamp the format a little bit and move through things quicker and not necessarily go as detailed onto any one topic initially. Also, looking to probably expand into short form content and put that up on YouTube and reels and shorts and stuff like that around different things relating to how you can kind of survive and get through the turmoil that we're currently in as a country and everything that's going on in our lives, both politically, economically, and even socially, the things that are going on. And I'm going to start off with kind of some opinions about things probably on every episode, and they're my opinions. You can agree with them, disagree with them, leave a comment. I don't care. I'm just telling you what I think and my views of things. So I want to start, and this episode is titled "That the World is Burning," and it always seems like there are a drastic number of things that happen in very rapid succession in our society. Coincidence, planned, not planned, who knows? And it doesn't really matter. The point is that the things happen and we have to get through them. So, currently in this environment that we are in the United States, the um, very fabric of society feels like it is unraveling to most people. You're starting to see more and more division among Americans. We have forgotten what unifies us. We have forgotten what makes us more alike than different. And I actually do believe that this wedge is being driven into American society on purpose. There are numerous examples of it that you do not even have to be a conspiracy theorist to go in and look at. So one of the things I'm actually going to avoid doing is, as best as I can, other than generalizing that an event happened, I'm going to avoid news platforms. You can go to your selected preferred news provider, and what you're really doing is participating in an act of preferential bias. You are self-reinforcing your opinions by only reading and consuming news that reinforces how you already feel and what you already believe. So it is just simply a form of confirmation bias. And one of the things I'm going to try to focus on in this podcast moving forward is actually let's get into some critical thought about how to improve things within our own lives, number one, because that's where it all actually begins at. As Michael Jackson said, it starts with the man in the mirror. So it begins with us and the critical thought and the processes that we have to go through in order to form an opinion, validate that opinion, test that hypothesis, and then confirm whether or not those facts that we believed previously are true or untrue. So, currently, and we're going to talk a little bit about politics probably on every episode. It's one of my fortes, and my degree is in political science. Okay. So we're probably going to talk about politics a lot because politics impact everything that you do. As an example, just a couple weeks ago, I attended a local city meeting about a highway expansion that's just a few blocks from my home. That's politics. That's zoning. It is local. It impacts you. You need to be aware of this. Most of us only hear the snippets from the national level, and we don't really dive into it. And that's kind of the problem is you've got to give these things critical thought. And there's so much being rapid fired at us that the average person either can't or does not want to expend that much mental energy in order to think and formulate an educated opinion about something. And that's the part that I think is very intentional by the powers that be, the people who want to push things one way or the other. That is why they do it in that technique. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about guns. We're going to talk about the events in Nashville that happened 2 days ago, the school shooting. Um, and I'm going to kind of just point out some things that I have seen. I am unabashedly pro gun. I am unabashedly pro Second Amendment. And I'm not really going to go into that. I'm not going to debate that specific point right now. What I really want to talk about in this episode and how we need to approach everything from the economic system, banking collapses, your personal finances, your belief in LGBTQ rights, your belief in not having those rights, your belief in gay marriage or not having gay marriage, your belief you're pro gun or you think all guns should be banned. We need to come up with and have an honest debate. And we're going to talk about why words do matter, as people tell us all the time, and how we say and how we view things. So I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to start off with um, basic definitions. And I'm going to walk through the process of where I think most Americans are. And then I'm going to talk about where we actually need to end up at in order to step back and understand the dynamic that is going on. So we'll share the screen here. And so what I want to talk about to start with is emotion. Okay. This is where currently, 2 days after the shooting in Nashville, and I'm using this as an example because it's the most recent thing in America as of the filming of this episode. Okay. But this was going to apply from this to train derailments in Ohio to bombings to Ukraine to China to whatever it may be. Banking collapses is emotion. Okay. We all experience it. We cannot turn it off, but we need to understand it for what it is. And let me actually make my screen a little bigger here. So I want you to actually read the whole thing here. So this is Webster's definition. Emotion is a conscious mental reaction, such as anger or fear, subjectively, and that is the key word here, is subjectively experienced as strong feeling, usually directed toward a specific object and typically accompanied by physiological and behavioral changes in the body. So let's break that down a little bit. What is Webster saying an emotion is? We were all upset that there was another shooting at a school and innocent people lost their lives. I am also equally, tragically, that the shooter's extended family that cared about that person is also affected by this. And look, I used to be a cop. The thing that I learned in my very first homicide investigation is everybody is somebody to someone. And it does not invalidate the fact that someone loved that person somewhere. Okay. And that's what I'm talking about here. A very human, just natural. This person had parents, they had probably cousins and grandparents and uncles and aunts and all of those things that this person was in their life, and their life has forever been altered also. I feel bad for all of them. Okay. And I grieve as a parent for the parents who lost children and everyone who lost a loved one there. But what Webster's is saying is that this emotional reaction that every American had, we need to actually recognize it and define what it is. It's fine to have it. It is perfectly fine to have an emotional reaction. But what you have to understand is this key word is that it is a subjectively experienced, okay? Meaning it is not rooted in fact. It is not rooted in anything tangible. Okay. I mean, if we were to look at it as a tangible kind of thing and whether or not it was valid, if you didn't know the person and you didn't have any connection with it, then from a physical, like relationship standpoint, why would you have an emotional reaction to it? So the reason you're having an emotional reaction to it is because you are subjectively experiencing what happened through your own lens of perception. And that is where we all live, is our own lens of perception within the world, including myself. I'm the first one to say it. All right. So what does that move into? People have a strong emotion and it's subjective. And so then people start to say things, and I have seen this repeatedly on Facebook and social media. People go, we have to have a conversation about this. We have to have a conversation and talk about these things. Okay. Well, is that what we need? Because what is a conversation? right? Like what is the point of a conversation? What is the actual thing that a conversation is? Because this is where words matter. Because I think as we go down this rabbit hole, you're going to understand. So we go from having an emotion to wanting to have a conversation. That's good. That's great. That is, it's just like grieving. There's a process to get through these things because this is a type of grief right now for our nation. So it's good to get through this process, but we have to go through the entire process in order to get to the other side. We cannot shortchange and short step the process. So what is a conversation? A conversation is an oral exchange of sentiments, observations, opinions, or ideas. Or you could say it's an informal discussion of an issue by representatives of governments, institutions, or groups, right? So, in other words, we're going to get together. We're going to talk about. We have conversations over dinner. We have conversations while we're driving in the car with our spouse on vacation. That is a conversation. Okay. But what does a conversation resolve? A conversation doesn't resolve anything. For everyone wanting to have a conversation, that's where our country is stuck, is in having a conversation. Conversation does not give us an outcome one way or the other that can be applied effectively to any situation. In the business world, you can have a lot of conversation. You can have a lot of talking about what we should do and what we might do and what we could do. But at the end of the day, that does not get anything done. So we need to move past that. And the next step past conversation is discourse. So, okay, well, now this is a different word. Well, isn't discourse just conversation? Well, maybe it's a type of conversation, okay? But discourse is a verbal interchange of ideas. You tell me your idea, I tell you my idea. And interchange means that we're receptive to that, okay? Interchange means that we're completing a communication loop, that I'm speaking and you're listening and you're able to reflect back to me my point. And then I can likewise do the same to you and reflect back to you your point. I have heard you, and then I get to speak. That is a discourse, okay? And if you look at the further down definition, it is a formal and orderly and usually extended expression of thought on a subject. Formal and orderly. In other words, we're not going to scream and shout at each other. We understand that we're entering into this discourse where we've moved past conversation. We are now at the point where we want to say we are going to have a discourse, a formal, orderly discussion, and express our thoughts on a subject. And you could do it verbally, you can do it in a speech, you can do it via writing. That's fine. It's also a mode of organizing knowledge, ideas, and experiences that's rooted in language. Okay. So when we think about that, there's also older definition, the capacity of orderly thought or procedure. But notice that discourse, it's repeatedly orderly, formal, orderly, formal. Okay. That is what a discourse is. And the ultimate goal, okay, the ultimate goal of discourse, right? So we've moved from that emotional state. Then we want to have a conversation. Now we've agreed that we're going to have a formal, orderly discourse and expand our thoughts. We're going to have an interchange where you listen, absorb, reflect back, and complete the communication loop. And then I do the same thing for you. That is where discourse gets us. And then finally, once we've had discourse, we can have a debate. Debate is the final step. Debate is where the resolutions come out and we decide, yeah, that's probably better. So a debate, there's a contention of words, right? We kind of use that like, oh, they're debating about that. Okay. But what we really want to talk about is that it's a regulated discussion of a proposition between two sides. Okay. Or it's a formal discussion of emotion before a deliberative body, such as Congress. Okay. So, but it's a regulated discussion. So, in other words, regulated means that there's rules. There are rules that contain this debate. And it's not that the rules are unfair. We've just already acknowledged that we're not going to do certain things when we're having a debate. Like, I don't think debate's taught in high school. It's not taught in English and rhetoric and classical English anymore in high school. Neither is Latin for that matter. But That's another topic. Okay. So we need to go from emotion to debate. And so, what does the regulated discussion look like? Okay. Well, I'm just going to go to the first one. Okay. There are rules around if you've taken a rhetoric course or had to take an argument course or a public speaking course, then you understand there are basically like 7 fallacies that if you use those in these courses, you're going to get an F. You cannot appeal to certain things or use certain verbiage, right? So modern times we're like, oh, you can't gaslight somebody. Yeah, you can't straw man somebody. You can't throw out a red herring, right? You can't use an emotional appeal. These are logical fallacies. You're showing confirmation bias. You can't do that. Okay. You can't say, well, I talk to my friends and all of my friends think that and therefore that. That is not valid. That is confirmation bias. That is you watching Fox News. That is you watching MSNBC. That is you watching CNN. You have selected the opinion that you want to hear before you ever even hear it when you do those things. So I'm going to be honest. I read every news channel, right? I try to. When there's a topic that interests me or I want to find something out, I'll go to Fox, CNN, MSNBC, NPR, BBC, Al Jazeera. I watch all of them because you would be surprised at what you learn by listening to the other side talk, what they selectively omit, and then what the other side selectively omits. And eventually you kind of start to paint this entire picture. Okay. So we want to have that debate of a proposition that is regulated. Okay. So, one of the big things, and the first thing, and where we are, especially currently with the shooting in Nashville, is that people are making an emotional appeal. It is emotional. Of course, I'm a dad. Of course, it is emotional. Okay. If you're not showing emotion over this, then you're dead on the inside. All right. But an emotional appeal, like right here, you see it. An appeal to emotion is also classified as a logical fallacy, meaning that there is a flawed or incorrect logic used in an argument, therefore making the argument unsound. Emotional pleas and emotional appeals are always an unsound way to try to prove your point. And it leads me to think and to um, believe that we're hung up on that emotional level. We're hung up in emotion and we're hung up in conversation. Okay. And that is not going to get us to a resolution of anything. So I'm not going to say one way or the other. I've already told you that I'm pro gun. Goes without saying, that being the case, I don't think a weapons ban of any type is going to help the situation. I believe there are other situations and other things that need to be addressed. Primarily, and one of the things this podcast is going to address in general is the systemic destruction of America from everything from family, values. And look, I'm not saying like you've got to confess some kind of religious belief. I just mean common sense things that you would consider 500 years ago common law. We're not going to murder somebody. Okay. Like I think we all are pretty much in agreement, and we'll start there. And we're going to go more into depth into other topics. But this current emotional argument that you're hearing from people, they want to have an emotion, and then they have a conversation. And then that conversation stops at the conversation level. We never get to the discourse level, right? Where we can interchange ideas, where we hear each other. And then we never get to a debate where we have a set of rules confining what we can say and how we win. You know, there are definitive losers and winners in life. And we are doing ourselves a disservice in society to believe that our emotion and our opinion overrides all of it. That is just not the case. Raise children, and for sure you will see that emotion and opinions do not, in fact, make fact. Anybody with a kid will tell you that, because at one point they all believe something that is dangerous and they're going to try to do it, and you have to stop them. I hope you do anyway. But back to the shooting. We have to have the discourse. And it's It's never the time immediately following an emotional event. People need to bring it down. That's why in these news cycles, you have ups and downs after these events. Currently, last week, 2 weeks ago, people were worried about banking. They were worried about banking until 3 days ago. And boom, something else happened. So they've switched from worry and fear over their personal finances and personal financial institutions to boom, now we're on to, oh my God, the children. And then after that, what's the next thing? Are we back to terrorism, or oh my God, is it China? Russia's gonna invade us. We're gonna have to go, it's gonna be World War III. We just go through a cycle of constant up, down, fear, worry, stress, sadness, grief, fear, worry, stress, sadness, grief. And we continue within that cycle because we consume everything that is said to us within our own confirming sphere of bias by the sources and the people that we listen to. You have got to break out of that. You have got to understand that you have power within yourself to get through these things. So, is the world on fire? Because that's the title of the video. It has problems. It has always had problems. And as the title of this episode suggests, Billy Joel said it. We didn't start the fire. The problems have existed for the entire human experience on this planet. They have varied in some degree. They have gotten better in some degree. They have gotten worse to some degree, all within a cyclic nature. And unfortunately, and we can talk more about cycles. We could talk about the fourth turning. We can talk about the 500-year cycle. We can talk about all the things that we now have the intelligence to study and have studied. But at the end of the day, we have to understand that at the root of all of these things is the human existence, the human experience, the society that we create locally within our country and even globally as human beings. And humans are to blame or to praise for the good and the bad. And that's the way we have to look at it. So I'm going to close out with that. Let's move past the emotion, get to the conversation, but don't stop. Get to the discourse and get to the actual debate. And let's talk about subject matters, facts, and the things that surround those. Let's support that with evidence. Let's support that with historical examples. One way or the other, that's where we need to be at. Because getting online and spouting your emotions and your opinion does nothing for anybody. All right. Thank y'all. Let me know what else you want to see in episodes. I promise I'm going to talk more about things like the solar panels I installed and battery backups and gardening and chickens. But man, I was holding off on starting this back until this week. This is the thing that gets to me. We are better than this. We are better than to act on emotion. That makes us an animal. That's what animals do. Okay. That's why people commit second-degree murder. They act on emotion and boom, something happens. We have the capacity and are expected to be intentional and have intentionality in our actions as human beings. And when we do that, that's when we move forward and that's when we progress. We'll talk to y'all later.